Hello everyone, it is once again book review time. Today I am here to review The Woodcutter King by Aerick Graham. I was sent this book in exchange for my free and honest review by the author himself, and that of course is what I'm going to be doing today. So the story of The Woodcutter King follows a couple of character perspectives, that of a father and of a son. The father, Aerick, is of a long line of men known as the Woodcutter Kings. They're basically the people who are tasked with protecting this village from the creatures and beings and the goddess who reside in this nearby forest. And the other character perspective in this book is that of his young son, Aerick. Aerick and his family live on the edge of the village near the forest that he is supposed to be basically guarding. Soon creepy things seem to be emanating from the forest. It used to be relatively peaceful, but now there are creatures and beings that are both kidnapping and taking children and killing people. And in addition to the threat from the forest, there's also an invading army. And Aerick sets out to kind of find a path for his family and the villagers to flee through, basically to escape to another kingdom in case they are invaded by this army, as well as trying to figure out what's going on with the forest. And then it basically also chronicles his son Aerick as he stays behind with his family and the events that take place while he is away. So that's the basic plot of this book, so now I'm going to get into my thoughts and some of what I thought about it and all of that good stuff. So I had mixed feelings with this book. The overall story I felt was very strong. I felt like it had a really solid plot. It had some very original ideas, and I enjoyed those things. I like the originality of the story itself. However, I did feel like the parallel plot lines of Aerick and his son Aerick were a little bit too divergent. It very much felt like I was reading two different books through most of the story, and it made it a little bit confusing and a little bit hard to stick to. And it didn't really make it hard to follow. It just kind of left me wanting more from one or the other. It made me not feel like Aerick and Aerick and the rest of the characters were as fleshed out as they could have been. I feel like we were just, because there was just so much going on, we're just getting kind of a cursory view of both of these main protagonists to the story instead of kind of delving into their character and how they are the way they are, particularly Aerick. A lot of his motivations I wasn't necessarily completely convinced by. I didn't have enough of a background of what made him the way he is until towards the end of the book. So a lot of his actions and the motivations, the way he acted towards his family felt jarring, I guess I would say. It didn't really kind of fit my picture of how I expected him to be. He was a little bit more aggressive with his family members than I was expecting, and I don't know, I just felt jarred. It kind of pulled me out of the story a little bit because it wasn't really what I was expecting to see from his character. And then the character of Aerick, he was a little bit more developed, I think, than the father character was, but I still felt myself being annoyed by him for a good chunk of the novel. He was a little bit too willful, didn't want to listen to anybody, did his own thing, but he wasn't really necessarily thinking things through before he acted upon them, and that made me feel frustrated with him more than anything else. I really wasn't rooting for him through most of the book because I just felt so irritated by his actions. I know he was young. I think he's about 11 years old, 11, 12, but he just felt like a very immature 11 or 12-year-old. I don't know. I just had a hard time getting into his plot line. I actually preferred the storyline of his father, to be honest, but we definitely got a little bit more of Aerick than we did Aerick. The book also kind of dragged a little bit in the middle. There wasn't a whole lot keeping me on the edge of my seat or wanting me to continue on for the middle half. A lot of the action kind of happened at the beginning and then again at the very end, and then the middle chunk was a little bit dragged out, at least for me. And I also felt like there was a little bit too much going on. I think this could have been cut into two books, honestly. I feel like the events of this invading army should have been one book, and then the events that had to do with the forest and the goblins that were kidnapping the children should have been a second book. I feel like combining two of these major events into one book made it a little bit hard to follow and to stay invested in. There was just a little bit too much going on. I felt a little bit jarred a lot of the times. I wasn't really sure what was going on or what was going to happen. And I feel like both of these two big events that occurred in this book didn't get the attention they were due because they weren't fleshed out as well as they could have been. I think that it really would have worked better had they been two separate books. It lacked a certain cohesiveness, I would say, which is part of the reason why I struggled getting through this book, is because I felt like there was either too much going on or there wasn't enough going on. Things weren't as fleshed out as they really could have been, whether it be characters or plot or even just the world in which this takes place in. The world building was actually the other part of this book that I had a hard time with. We definitely got a good picture of the forest and the village, but the overarching world that this village and this forest reside in, I kind of would have liked a little bit more context for, a little bit more of a history. We did get a little bit of that at some point, but it just had to pertain to the village itself and the forest that it is next to. But the kingdom that this village resides in, I would have liked a little bit more of a history to. A king is mentioned, but I would have liked a little bit more to know a little bit more about the king and the kingdom and just kind of the bigger world picture of this story. With that being said, some of the things that I did enjoy about this book was the actual concept of the story. I really do like the concept. I think it's a very fresh concept. It's something new and something that I think has a lot of potential. I also thought the writing itself was pretty good. I enjoyed his descriptions of the people and the setting in which this book takes place in when we do get things described to us, such as how the village looked or how the forest looked. And he definitely had the atmosphere set. He kind of gave it a little bit more of a dark, kind of bleak vibe to the story that kind of pervaded throughout the entire novel. I did actually enjoy a lot of the side characters. I actually enjoyed the side characters a little bit more than the two main protagonists of Aerick and his son. I actually would have liked to have this book split into more character perspectives than just Aerick and his son. I think it would have been nice to kind of have some chapters from his mother or his sister's perspective or even his friend and other villagers. I think that would have strengthened the novel quite a bit. So overall, my rating for this book, I kept flip-flopping between 2.5 and 3 stars, so it's definitely somewhere in the middle there. It wasn't by any means the worst book I've ever read. It was a decent book, and it definitely, I think, is a good solid start to what could eventually be a good series. I think just some things need to be fleshed out. I would like to see more character growth on the part of not only the main protagonist, but a few of the side characters. Like I would have liked to have more of a history of his mother and, you know, what was going on with his sister and his other brothers and how they are the way they are, like how their personalities were formed. Like I think just having better and bigger character development would have been fantastic. I also would have liked to see more world building, more of a history and a context for this kingdom that this village resides in. And I would have liked to have seen the story consolidated a little bit better. Perhaps, like I said before, I would have liked to have seen the event of this invading army in one book and the event of the forest and the goblins and that are stealing the children, whatever's going on with the goddess, that to be a second book. I think it would have been stronger had they been split apart more thoroughly. So like as I said, overall I ended up rating this book about 2.5, 3 stars. I gave the writing itself a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I gave the world in which this took place in 2 stars. I gave the characters 3 stars. I gave the plot, the story, the actual story and the plot of this book 3.5 out of 3.5, 4 stars. I kept flip-flopping on that one as well. So I think it was definitely a good, solid start to what could eventually be a really good fantasy series. Aerick Graham is definitely a pretty solid writer, and I am excited to see what things will come from him in the future. Alright guys, that is it for my review of The Woodcutter King by Aerick Graham. I hope this gave you guys a better idea of my thoughts on it and kind of gave you a better context for my rating of this book. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. You'll have to let me know if you've read this and what your thoughts are if you have done so. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a lovely day. Until next time, happy reading. Bye!